Who decides who gets to vote? Let's go back to the founding of our country. There were two Continental Congresses in 1774 and 1775, at which representatives, all male of course, from each of the 13 colonies, attended to have their say about formation of a new nation. They were charged with a highly challenging task: find common ground to create a new nation with the other 12 colonies, but for heaven's sakes, don't give up our states' rights in the process of doing so. As we know, that left the leaders of these congresses, such as John Adams, Ben Franklin, and Thomas Jefferson, among so many more, to figure out how to walk that fine line to achieve a governmental structure they knew would pass muster back home. While Abigail Adams may have written to her husband chiding, "If particular care and attention is not paid to the ladies," she wrote, "we are determined to foment a rebellion and will not hold ourselves bound by any laws in which we have no voice or representation." Abigail's warning must have had an effect, as things started well with women's voting rights at the founding of our country. In 1776, New Jersey became the first of the new United States to grant some women the right to vote. Its state constitution restricted the vote to property owners, but made no mention of sex or race. Later statutes even referred to voters as he or she. But in 1777, women lost the right to vote in New York. In 1780, women lost the right to vote in the state of Massachusetts. In 1784, they lost it in New Hampshire. And in 1787, at the U.S. Constitutional Convention, voting qualifications were put in the hands of the states. Women in all states, except New Jersey, lost the vote. For the next 20 years, New Jersey women who met the property qualification, predominantly single women and widows, were active participants in elections at all levels, local, state, and national. But in 1807, New Jersey took the vote away from women and free black men when it passed election laws that restricted voting rights to tax-paying white males. New Jersey women did not regain the vote until the 19th Amendment's ratification in 1920. States' power to determine voter eligibility has made the struggle for women's voting rights a piecemeal process from the earliest days of the Republic through the first decades of the 21st century. States have enacted innumerable laws to suppress voting, such as requirements to be white, male, land-owning, English-speaking, and reading. Restrictive measures such as poll taxes, which meant only those paying the tax were allowed to register to vote, literacy tests to prohibit African American men from voting in the years after passage of the 14th and 15th Amendment, and age restrictions further suppressed the vote. While poll taxes were deemed unconstitutional in a Supreme Court case in 1966, just after the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, new voting restrictions were enacted by a whopping 23 states when the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act in 2013. This created new obstacles to voting in the decade leading up to the 2018 elections, according to the nonpartisan coalition Election Protection. Today, those wishing to suppress the vote continue to challenge voter rights by enacting onerous voter ID requirements and even remove postal service equipment to make it more difficult to mail voter ballots. On the opposite side, those wishing to expand voter rights do everything in their power to aid those challenged to secure their voting rights. As has been recently recommended, register now and vote as early as possible to ensure your ballot is counted.